Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Thursday morning session. Is it Thursday already? My goodness, this week has just zipped on by. All right, so let's see what we got going on. For those of you who are new to our trading room this morning, welcome. What you're looking at here is the diversified trading system. And the way I have mine set up is I have my Hawk Scalper here on the top left, Falcon Swing Trader top right, Eagle Trend Trader bottom left, and the Raptor on the bottom right. The charts that you see on this screen are the NASDAQ. I'm also watching the YM, that's the mini Dow, and crude oil on my other monitor. Let's take a look at the overnight, see what's going on, where the market's been. Here, we'll do it on the, well, why don't we do it on the Raptor today? You can see a strong overnight session. The market was quite confused yesterday. Let's see, where did they end the day? Right about here somewhere. So they finished yesterday, I guess it would have been right about here, around 42.97, I think was the closing price. And this is going to look like a little bit of an opening gap. Oh, just a little bit. The market went sideways, took a big run up, big run down, and then when the European session opened, took a big run up again. And you can see this is where we're at, and this is going to look like a rather large opening gap to traders this morning. Whether or not that's going to put some pressure on the market remains to be seen, but right now the NASDAQ's still on a tear to the upside. No stop in the NQ. So we'll let the dust settle out a little bit. Oh, the YM just gave us a trend change signal. So here's the YM. Now our band, this is on the Eagle, our band is just flipped over. Technically this is a rule of three, but with the rule of three, I always like to see a test of the extreme before I get the sell. Now it's hard to say at this point whether this tiny little hiccup here is our test of the extreme or not. It does give us an opportunity on the second push entry, and even though it's very early, we're only a few minutes into the open, normally I don't even play with things like this, but if you were so inclined, you could probably dial down your risk amount and just throw a 1Z on there and see if there's any follow through on it. Like I said, big opening gap for the market this morning. And we'll see whether it does anything to get into that gap. So there's a possible signal on the YM. On the Eagle, here is we got a trend change signal also working right here on the Falcon. Same sort of deal, where it's already broken, and it's nice actually to see these buyers come in now. That shows us that there is some buying going on here. And the logic is that if these buyers get run over now, then the sellers obviously have control of the market. But it is early, so if you were inclined to take that type of trade, you might want to scale back your risk a little bit. Here is the YM on the Hawk. And you can see we've hit the skids a little bit. We've got some yellow bars cropping up here. Our filter is starting to break up a little bit. Starting to look a little bit like, dare I say, a trend change, maybe? Could be a little premature still. Okay, and here comes the Raptor, also with an early signal right out of the gate with the YM, or sorry, the NQ, getting all my initials mixed up. Now, normally with the Raptor, I like to see a double pullback, preferably into the hard edge. This is a very short double pullback, but here's another instance where we get a chance for a second push on the entry. This is probably something I would just want to take a onesie on, and I would definitely want to enter above that high there. Might have to change stop strategies to get something where I want it to be. All right, so we'll see whether or not that actually builds into something. Not the strongest of signals. As I mentioned, I much prefer to see a double pullback to the hard edge, but it is an early signal. So I'm trying hard not to get too anxious on it. Okay, the YM kind of retreating a little bit from our earlier plan, but that's okay. My objective here is just not to get stuck on the wrong side of the market. So if this bar finishes higher, actually produces a green warning dot, then that's probably a good spot to get out. Oh, was there a big lottery going on in the U.S.? Dustin says, well, I didn't hit the 500 million, so I had to do it trading. Yeah, you guys get some crazy big lotteries going on in the States. Those Powerball lotteries are insane. Here in Canada, a big lottery is 50 million, and then they start tacking on some extra $1 million prizes. It would probably come in helpful. Okay, getting a early trend change signal here on our Falcon. It's not the same as our usual trend change. We're working on it here. Haven't got the signal just yet. We're working on a warning dot here on our Eagle. So this would be a signal which is all in sync, but like the Raptor, I tend to prefer an Eagle signal that actually comes off of the hard edge. Uh, Thanks for the news, Fran. Fran says there's a big dock workers strike, which is detrimental, holding the market down a bit. I know Greece is in the news again, and there's a big stink about whether the EU will be able to reach an agreement what they're going to do with Greece, or if Greece is facing bankruptcy again. It's a big stink all the way around. I really don't expect today to be a very good trading day. I expect a lot of choppiness today, primarily because of Greece in the news and such. Here is a late filter entry on our Falcon, but again, it's a signal that we probably want to take advantage of that second push on the entry. And I'm going to dial down the risk amount. This would be on the YM now. Yeah, see, we are going to get this bigger pullback now to the hard edge here on the Raptor. We took an early hit. It was worth a try. I'm not, upset that it didn't work out. It was unfortunate, of course. But now we should get the proper double pullback to the hard edge, get a bounce if, of course, the NQ is inclined to head higher. That's a funny kind of morning. Ooh, Dustin says nobody's won the big lotto for over 2 months now. Yeah, that could make for an interesting prize. Wow, Jim says the advanced decline is really lopsided. We're about 1,500 to the good. 1,500 shares trading positively and over the declining shares. So that tends to, what that means, folks, is that tends to be a bullish factor. That's saying that the market is a little bit bullish today, or at the moment anyway. And we're getting that kind of signal off of our YM trade now too. Look at this. We're getting a red bar buy off of a hard edge bounce. I know our band has just flipped over to be bearish. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to reserve my entry until we get in sync with this skinny little ATR line. But we do know that once the market encounters the hard edge, we can expect some sort of reaction. So now the YM is looking a little bit more on the bullish side. Actually, it's a pretty big mess at the moment. But it is early, right? It's only a few minutes, almost 15 minutes into the open. All right, we're getting a hard edge bounce signal here on the Eagle also in our NQ. I think this is one I would probably like to reserve my entry until we get in sync with the ATR also. Great spot to cover the trade, however. Below this swing low, that's a fantastic place to cover this position. And here comes the Raptor again. Woohoo! Dare we try it one more time? We'll take it above the ATR, or pardon me, above second push entry. Jeepers, Eric. It's a little bit early in the day, folks. Okay, we're doing a little better this time. Okay, and while that was going on, we also while that's going on, we also got a buy signal here on the YM on our Falcon. And unfortunately, while I was setting up my other trade, this one broke out, but I was watching this. It was our trend change signal. We had a lot of hesitation here to the downside, our filter all breaking up. I was waiting for a push higher and a possible trend change signal, and that's exactly what we got. Trend line changed here. We got everything in sync, and now we're seeing a little bit of a push to the upside. Now, of course, we've just broke out through here, so it's not unusual to see some sort of reaction on the part of the sellers. And hopefully after that, we will see the buyers step up again. The NQ a little bit slower to respond, at least here on the Falcon, and that is very unlike the NQ. But working on a trend change signal here also. We do need to see the signal trip, but we're currently have a couple of trades going on both here in the Eagle and the Raptor. There you go. Okay, we're very close to our Raptor target here, and well, maybe I'll just dial up the stop strategy a bit, go back to the default. I was going to say times like this, I'll bring the trade up to break even or probably below this bar right here. You see this one with this big tail? That tells me that there was some selling going on here and the buyers managed to push the market up again. So if it fails at this point, well then that's probably a pretty good spot to get out. You see what's going on here is we're right back to these highs. This is where the sellers have decided to dig in. So the sellers are getting very aggressive at selling 43.28. Oh, here come the buyers. They're going to knock them down. Oh, come on. Get up there. Here, let me help you. In fact, this is one that I should have had a runner on, because once we break 43.28, there is a very real possibility that we could see the market make a nice little run from there. Why is that, you say? Well, because we have all these sellers who are placing their stop orders right here. Right, they're selling on limit orders with their stops a few ticks higher. So if somebody ticks 43.28, just watch, there could be, the market's going to go, it's just going to take off like a shot here. See, okay, there's 28. See, now watch the activity. Oh, they're knocking them down a little bit heavier than I thought. There's a few more sellers there. But normally this bar will start fidgeting back and forth, and get really excited. Oh, no, the sellers are a little stronger than I anticipated there. I still think we've got a buyer's market here at the moment, but obviously the sellers are stepping up, trying to knock it down, or there could be a little profit taking as well. Sometimes it's hard to discern the difference, whether it's a profit-taking move or whether sellers are actually jumping in on the market again. Very quirky morning, no question. Come on. Getting a first micro-macro cross signal here also after the breakout. Now the hash mark's going to print a few ticks below this high. Personally, I think it's a better plan, rather than take it on the hash mark, to offer up a couple extra ticks, take it above the high. You could probably risk it to here. And in fact, I might even risk it a little bit lower. Oh, there they go. The NQ already grabbed my stop. I actually wanted it down here, so I'm going to disable my stop for the moment. Of course, what I'm thinking is, because this market has made a big move up here, we haven't really seen a test of the extreme, right? We haven't seen this part here yet. Yes, we have broken here. Yes, I am expecting at least 2 moves in the direction of the breakout, but I didn't actually want to be brought in too early. But I think we'll be all right on this. We just got to hang tough for a bit and hopefully not get stopped on a retracement if it chooses to happen at this point. The YM being a little bit more cooperative, actually. Here was our first micro-macro cross in the YM. It would have had the same kind of thing going on, but I don't know. You see, sometimes these tests of the extreme are easier to see in hindsight. In hindsight, it looks like that was our test of the extreme there. This was our first micro-macro cross. We did break above the resistance area, came back down, retested it, see on these bars right here, and then came back with our signal. So this would have been a signal where perhaps you could have had a little bit more confidence in it. I still would have been inclined to run it fairly deep stop on this, just in case this here was not the test of the extreme and the market was going to try to make a macro pullback. But nice progression on that one. So the mini Dow doing a little bit more than the NQ right now. All right, let's go. Come on. If I wasn't already long here, I would definitely be looking at a macro pullback now in the NQ. And I would be looking for this market to recover fairly shallowly after breaking this resistance here. They might be seeing, traders might be seeing this as the more significant resistance level or support level at 43.25. Let's see what the S&R suite is calling for. The S&R suite is actually saying 43.28 is a hefty line. And then we also have a bullish support line here at 43.18. We'll see if we don't get an early recovery out of that. Come on, boys and girls. Thanks, Jim. Jim says the advanced decline really up. We're about 1,700 shares to the good right now. So at least according to the New York Stock Exchange, things have a more bullish note to them. Crude oil's just taking a bit of a nosedive, and we'll look at that in a second. We are getting our macro pullback signal here on the YM now, and I would choose to cover it a little bit deeper as so. Remember, whenever markets change direction, they rarely do it on a dime, right? They've got to sort themselves out, and that usually means a little bit of choppiness. Nice late filter entry here on crude oil. Take a look at that. Now, honestly, this would have been a little bit tricky to take because we have the major uptrend, right? Normally, I don't get all that excited about countertrend signals when I have a strong trend in play. However, this is a proper trend change signal. So if you chose to take that, you may choose to dial down your risk amount a little bit. And then we came back a few minutes later with this late filter entry signal. Now this is almost too tempting not to trade. And you can see that a very well-defined area for the buyers and sellers. We have this tight little range here. And we're coming back with a solid sell signal. As you know, these late filter entry signals tend to be very reliable. And of course, a late filter entry occurs when the filter goes out of sync, but the trend line does not. That shows a lot of strength on the part of the sellers. The filter, the momentum shifted, and then it came back. So the buyers had it or were trying to get it just for a moment. And then the sellers brought it all back together. Trend line never changed. That's a very strong sell signal. But again, it's in the face of a larger uptrend. Now I know the fib traders, they're pulling lines all over the place. And I suppose you could look at it and you could say, well, even if we got a 50% retracement, there's still more than enough opportunity in here that you could see some sort of profit potential. And you'll notice that our support line is also very close to where that 50% retracement might have worked out. So nice opportunity here in crude oil, one where you could have covered your trade fairly well, right? You have these little swing highs showing you this is where the sellers are actively selling. Good place to get out if the market reverses on you. And just a very nice progression lower. Oh, and look at that. Found some support on our support line, our bullish support line. So great opportunity there in crude oil. Fran says, I never leave home without the support resistance suite. I'm I'm very proud of that. I did the math behind that, and it works. I have to say it works very well. For those of you who would like more information about it, you can go there. Or actually, I think this is the shortcut to it. And those funny links are just so that we can tell which links are coming out of the room and which one are coming out of emails and so on. Okay, so things looking a little bit better for us at the moment. The Raptor working on a possible signal here. I saw that warning dot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw an order in. Remember, these orders are live on your Raptor the moment they go in. So I'm going to let that signal build. So I know it's going to finish up here. My stops are enabled. I'll take it on the hash mark, and once again we're seeing all these sellers up here getting their stops run over, their exit orders. And I don't want to roll my stop all that fast. Nice little retest type signal coming here out of our YM trade. You can see we've got the warning dots. I can anticipate that the hash mark is going to print up here. Nice thing about the YM, because it's a $5 instrument, you can dial down your risk amount and still take some size on your trade. So this 179.20 area will be a definite obstacle for the buyers. Okay, Mo is asking, Eric, how far out do you place the risk on the YM? Now, I'm assuming that you're talking about the stop loss. I like to go towards swing points. Swings are always going to be your strongest stops. And the reason is because they're the most technically sound. Remember, we're using the risk amount here, the risk percentage, to control our risk exposure. So whether I set up my trade like this, or I set up my trade like this, oops, that was a little bit too far. Let's say I risk it way down here. My risk amount stays the same. Notice it's still about $250. So I chose this little intermediate swing, well, partly because the stop strategy was there, but also because there is some soundness to this level, because there has been some active buying going on here, right? This is where the buyers started buying the market again. We saw the break here of these little intermediate old support, supposed to become new resistance. Now it's broken again to the upside, so it should give support back to the market. But that's how I place my stops. I try not to strangle the trade. As you've heard me say in the room before, for me, the only thing worse than a losing trade is losing on what would have been a winning trade. Losing because my stops were too tight. That's why I let the trade manager control my risk exposure, so that at no time do I risk more than I can afford to lose. And if I try to risk more than I can afford to lose, Trade Manager just won't let me do it. Okay, so the YM not quite ready just yet. And I don't know what their holdup is. Get up there. You know you want to. See here on the NQ, I chose this swing down here as this is the most fundamentally sound place to run a stop. It gives me the greatest staying power. I could run a tighter stop. I could run a stop right here below this little swing. And in fact, if this bar finishes green, I'll probably figure it's time to get a little bit more aggressive with my stops. But we've broken a major support area, major resistance area. The market might choose to thrash around a little bit. And this is the great thing about trading, is you can go back in your chart and you can find similar areas and you can say, okay, what happened the last time the market broke an area like that? Okay, it broke it. Oh, look, some serious thrashing, and then finally, even a little more thrashing before it finally continued higher. So this is not at all unusual for a market to chop around after breaking a significant area of support or resistance. In this case, resistance, obviously. I could also run my stop here below this trend line. That would be a fundamentally sound place also, because if prices retreated to the trend line, there's a lot of traders watching trend lines. Trend lines are hardly stealthy. A lot of traders look at trend line levels as opportunities to buy. If the market traded back to the trend line, there would be some active buying going on at trend line support. Yeah, Mo says the YM looks like it's flagging. Yes, it is. And that's because there's a little bit of a tug-of-war going on at the moment. Oh, here we're coming back. Buyers and sellers are sorting themselves out. Here comes our warning dot. So we know there's going to be if this finishes higher, we should get a triangle hash mark. It'll probably print on the other side of 179.20. Mo's asking about the margin requirements on the YM. Most stock indices have intraday margin requirements of anywhere from $500 to $1,000. However, check with your broker. Of course, your broker is the one who you will owe the margin to, or they're going to hold your margin for the exchange, but normally intraday margins are a fraction of what the overnight margins are. Nope, still not ready to go. Okay, I'll look away. That'll make it go higher. Okay, and here's the NQ also working on a trend change signal to the upside. Not quite as pretty as the one we're looking at in the YM, but the same kind of principle. And in fact, this one I'm going to take above the high. It's only going to cost me one more tick to go above the high. And here too, I think I'm going to keep my stop a little bit on the looser side. Now, if this amount is too much, like if this market is looking like, oh, gee, I don't know what's going on here, dial it down. Don't be afraid to dial down your risk amount. Better to dial it down and risk less, risk an amount that you're a little bit more comfortable with than, tossing your desk lamp across the room because you feel like you've lost more than you can afford. But remember, that's the whole point here of using this risk manager portion of the trade manager. Let it manage your risk for you. Oh, you guys, come on, get up there. Dustin's asking, what does it mean when it says daily maintenance of $4,000? Does that mean you have to have $4,000 as a starting balance? Margin is the amount of money you need to pony up in order to play, in order to actually purchase a contract. So it's like the ante on a poker game. That's margin. Maintenance is how much you have to keep in your account in order to maintain that open position. Now, maintenance is normally a consideration if you're holding overnight. So if you have a position that you're holding on to after the day session ends, the exchange would expect you to at least have the maintenance amount in your account. But margin is your initial investment. That's how much you need to control a contract. Maintenance is how much you need to keep the contract. All right, the YM still beating up the early morning highs here at 43.29. Obviously, I could have had a better buying opportunity, although it never did build into a macro pullback signal, did it? So we're still working on our first micro-macro cross signal, and I might choose to roll my stop a little bit. It looks like this support area seems to be where the buyers have decided to become a little bit more active. Okay, a couple great questions here. Micah asks, is it worth trading the night session, not the day session? The night session is a great way to get your feet wet because everything happens a lot slower. Now, last night was not too bad. Out of the London Open, we had a macro pullback signal. And this one actually developed rather quickly. Normally, a signal like this will take a good 5 minutes to unfold. This one looks like it sprinted there in about 3 minutes. But things tend to be a little bit slower if you're trading a North American index in the overnight session. Same thing with the Asian session. See, here's the Asian session last night. And look at the time. Here's the first micro-macro cross to the downside. And 15 minutes later, it goes lower. Here's a macro pullback later, about an hour later. So everything develops a little bit slower. And there are still some good opportunities to be had in the overnight. So it's a great way to get your feet wet, a great way to get used to trading real money without having too many things happening at once. Now, unfortunately, the overnight sessions aren't always like this. Sometimes the overnight sessions look like this, where nothing really happens. It just goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with following the overnight. And of course, the trading world is such a place now that you can find any instrument to trade that has a native time zone. So for instance, if you're trading the Asian session, you can trade the Nikkei exchange, you can trade the yen, you can trade the Aussie dollar. Those would all be within that same time zone, or even the euro for that matter. Gold is 24 hours. You can trade gold any time of the day or night. But like I said, yeah, you can trade the stock indices also if you were so inclined. But normally you try to trade the session or the instrument that is native to the day session. So if you're trading the NASDAQ or the Dow or the E-mini or crude oil, then you're usually looking at trading the North American day session. And somebody get in there and light these guys up. What is taking them so long to rally? They were like a rocket ship yesterday, in spite of all that choppiness. Joe is asking, how long is settlement time on futures? They settle at the end of every day, Joe, so instantaneous. You get that money in your account immediately because futures are not like stocks. You actually never own a futures contract. Or, pardon me, you own the contract. You don't own the future as you do a stock. So if you buy stock in Apple or Facebook or IBM or whatever, you actually physically own a part of that company via your share. But in the futures world, you're just contracting to buy and sell. So we're contracting to buy the NASDAQ at 43.2450, and we're hoping to sell it back to somebody at 43.34 and a quarter and keep the difference. Right? It's not unlike a retail environment where you contract with your wholesaler to buy a widget at $5 and hope to sell it retail for $12.50 and keep the difference. So because it's a contractual obligation and not an outright purchase, everything is settled immediately at the end of every trading day. If you've ever seen the show Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, the closing scene there where they wipe out the Duke brothers. Well, they wipe them out because the Duke brothers have to make good at the end of the day. They were trading futures. All right, so our order never got tripped here, thank goodness. So we're going to cancel that. I do think we just got tagged on our stop here on the Raptor. So that's unfortunate. We did have a nice move higher here, but the Raptor reluctant now to head higher. What's with that? Okay. Well, like I said, I'm not too terribly surprised that we're seeing a rather choppy session right now. did think they would press a little higher, but maybe that big opening gap is starting to call everybody. We should get one more push to the upside, and I will get more aggressive on my stops on this next leg higher. Fran says, I thought a gap up meant a bullish trend. Yes, sometimes. Um, the gaps up tend to be called expansion gaps. Let me get you another chart here, show you what this looks like. Come on, work with me. Okay, so here's a 15-minute chart, and I know it's going to look a little bit funny. Oh, I should get rid of the daybreak lines, but you can see here's a rather substantial opening gap. Now, these tend to be called expansion gaps. Sometimes they're called exhaustion gaps, and you really don't know the difference between the two until they've run their course. An exhaustion gap would mean that we're going to get a little bit of an island of trading up here. And then the next day, the market's going to start heading lower. And this would be called, up here now, this would be called a bull trap, where all the buyers got snookered into buying the market only to watch it collapse the next day. So there's a possibility that it's going to try to trade into this gap like it did yesterday. You see, we had a similar thing going on here yesterday and the day before. There's a little gap there, traded in early. Here was yesterday's gap, did not trade into the gap until much later in the session. And here we have today's gap, which is the biggest one yet, and the market kind of waffling. So at this point, it's still unclear whether this is an expansion gap, which should cause the market to head higher, or whether it's an exhaustion gap and the market is actually going to end up trading lower. The plot thickens. All right, so we were watching this trend line earlier here on our NQ trade, looking for some trend line support. Yeah. Like Jim says, one thing for sure, it isn't looking like a gap and go. No, sir. That is the truth. Honestly, folks, I think I was doing a little bit of reading about this whole mess in Europe with Greece and everything, and I think traders are reluctant to get too heavy into the stock market. I bet you if you check today's volume, it's on the thinner side. I don't think we're getting a whole lot of trading. In fact, here we're not in our Raptor trade anymore. I can put volume on here. Is this what I want? Yep. Oh, sorry, didn't do that right. Volume. Pretty blue in keeping with the Raptor theme. So today, well, at the moment, we're only trading 461 contracts. Let's go back. Well, yesterday was a little bit on the quiet side too. That's the Asian. All right, let's get here into yesterday's session. So it's 7:30 my time. So around 7:30 yesterday, we were trading, we were trading about 4 or 5 times as many contracts as we are right now. And if we go back another day, we're still trading about, well, yeah, there was a little bit of a low point there, but still, for the most part, we were trading at least double what we see going on now. So there were some spikes in here, but for the most part, I don't know, it does look like volume might be off a tad. That's a technical trading term, by the way. And we're starting to get some conflicting signals in the YM now. Here's our Falcon. Filter starting to break up all over the place. We had the nice move higher. Now we're attempting to make a trend change lower. No signal just yet, but that's how things are trying to shape up. I guess we should have been watching crude oil this morning. That was the market with a major push lower. Here is crude oil. Here was that late filter entry signal. Look at that, folks. You could still be trailing a stop in this trade, short from 50.90 down to, well, we'll say $50 even. That's 90 ticks. That's $900. Crude oil routinely makes a 90 tick move per day. So if you're following crude oil and you did not capitalize on this move, well, then you might want to just chalk it up to bad luck and leave it alone, because we had a 90 tick move higher, a 90 or 1,000 tick move higher, 1,000 tick move lower. That seems to be crude oil's range right there within the first hour, hour and a half of trading. The move du jour. All right, you guys. Let's see you dig in now. Come on, buyers. Don't let me down. Mo says, Eric, I love following you with the Renko bars that work quite well. I also watch the 20 and 50 EMA as they cross over. They also seem to give great entry points as they cross over each other. Yeah, that's a very good observation, Mo. The 20 and the 50, two very popular moving average time frames. Great confirmation tools. Okay, getting another, here's our eagle on the YM, and we are getting another red bar buy off of a hard edge bounce. We're already sweating this trade a little bit, but if you're not currently long, this might be another good opportunity. It does seem like the market is respecting the trend line somewhat, which is kind of nice to see. Of course, now we've got this mess going on right here. So 179.10 could be a tough spot. Certainly 179.20, a real holdup for the YM at the moment. And they're just plodding along. Oh, come on, you guys. Why are you making this more difficult than it needs to be? Everything looks positive. You know, we've got everything more or less bullish, and yet the market doesn't want to go higher. What's up with that? Kind of happy. Yeah, Dustin says nap time. That's exactly right. They're perfectly content where they are. Don't care whether they're going higher or lower. Okay, finally they're seeing things our way. Okay, don't quit now. See where they're digging in? Oh, you guys, you are killing me this morning. Good time to get caught up on your email. If we can push through here now, we'll be in good shape. See, we've got buyers here, and our stop, I think our stop will swing higher. If not, I'll manually move it a little bit closer here, probably below the hard edge on the band. Boy, oh boy, sure earning this one. Dustin is asking, do we have a profit or do I have a profit run scheduled anytime soon? No, not really. Haven't talked to Adam about doing a profit run again. Here's an interesting little play in crude oil where we have an opportunity to sell a green bar sell off of a hard edge bounce. Very interesting little setup that we have there. What makes this even more interesting is that we have a macro pullback in the hawk. So we have conflicting signals here on crude oil at the moment. Now, I normally don't like to see conflicting signals, and a lot of times I'll dial down the risk amount, or sometimes I'll opt for one and ignore the other. Of course, this market more in a downtrend today than an uptrend, which is probably why I've given preference to the possible sell. And the Raptor still taking its time. Still a lot of yellow bars through here. The Raptor, of course, not the faster tool. It tends to be a little bit more objective. Like really waits the market out. See all this mess through here. Okay, so the Raptor not quite ready just yet. We're getting some definite pressure on the market. Okay, let's see about being a little bit more aggressive on our stop. So I've gone with a 3-period ATR. Essentially, it's going to follow the trend line more or less. Our macro pullback signal that we were looking at here in crude oil just for the moment, fortunately never tripped, and now it's into yellow bars, so we can safely ignore it. Or I can safely ignore it. I don't like trading yellow bars. And did we get a red bar buy here? Yes, we did. It didn't really trip in the traditional sense. We might get a first micro-macro cross here on the NQ to the upside, which I would probably take a poke at. You know that? The markets, it did perform to the upside a little bit. It does not seem to be happy about going lower. So we're still contending with these earlier highs here around 43.29, 43.30. Real obstacle for the market right through there. Well, our crude oil trade progressing not too badly at the moment. So we're getting our test of the extreme now. Crude oil, one of these markets that I'm not opposed to being a little bit more aggressive on my stops with. There's a lot of money in play. This little candle right here with this little bit of a wick would be a suitable place to trail your stop above also, because it did show some buying pressure. My concern is that we might see some, not really so much trend line support, but if the market is changing direction here, we might see a little bit of a hiccup or a test of the extreme, and then the market take off like that. Of course, if it continues lower from here, we're almost guaranteed to hit our profit objective. Come on. Wow, Dustin wasn't kidding with his nap time comment. It's like, that's all I can do to keep my eyes open. Come on, let's go. I'm not normally a type A personality, but this is almost too slow even for me. All right, here, crude oil's making a little bit of progress. Let's head back there. And now you can see this candle here with this little bit of a wick, also a good spot now to roll our stop to. I have gone to the more aggressive bar high low strategy. Just for kicks, let's see where parabolics would be at. No, parabolics are still way up here. Notice we're getting a little bit of buying going on. Right off that trend line. Oy, come on. Let's see, what do we got? 200 bucks. Never be afraid to punch out of a trade. I always use the sidewalk test. You know, if I'm walking down the street and I see $200 laying on the side of the road, do I stop and pick it up? Yeah, probably. All right, here come the sellers. This is gonna, just watching the YM. We did just get a late filter entry signal here to the downside. Looks like the buyers have left the building. Nice flat trend line here, didn't change color, did come in with the sell signal. Chances are that the market's going to try to move lower from here. So we also had a first micro macro cross signal here in the YM to the downside right here. And we're right back now at this support. So a lot of yellow bars coming in here. You know what, folks? We may just see the market continue to go sideways, at least for the rest of the morning. We really haven't gotten a whole lot of traction one way or the other. And I'm afraid that the lack of upward momentum is only going to cause the market to head lower. Looks like we're about to get stopped here on our crude oil trade, but at least it's going to have a little bit of profit to it. Let's put that away for now. Wow, they're just brutal today. Well, I've had just about all the fun I can handle for one day. So, and this will happen too. You know, this is something to be aware of, that some days the market is just not going to play nice. World events and economic events and FOMC reports and a whole slew of other things come into the mix and just kind of hold the market back. Days like today, you need to have a pain threshold in play. A dollar amount where you say, that's it, I've had enough, no more. I'm only going to give the market to below this bar right here. If they can't rally it from here, then it's probably going to head lower. But, you know, too many yellow bars. Lots and lots and lots of yellow bars. When you get things like a late filter entry signal, if I'm just looking at the YM here struggling with this late filter entry, and once again, the late filter entry is when your filter goes out of sync, but your trend line does not. Very high probability signal for your Falcon tool. If this signal should fail and not hit the profit objective, whenever you have a market that is not behaving, we know this is a high probability signal. If this high probability signal fails and goes the other way, trades through these highs, then there's probably something wrong with the market. There's probably market conditions going on that we're not aware of that are causing us a little bit of grief. Here's a 3-arrow consolidation building in crude oil. We've got our warning dot. And the nice thing about these consolidation signals is we have a great place to cover the trade. I was actually going to dial down the risk amount here in a second, but we'll take it for what it is. Well, they did slip us a tick, but whatever. So possible 3-arrow consolidation in crude oil. And once again, type of signal that you don't want to crowd too much. This is hopefully translating into a test to the extreme to the upside. And now we might see the market head lower from here. That's what we're hoping anyway. Well, if things don't shape up here in a moment, I think I'm going to pack up my toys if you are trading this afternoon, I don't think you should get too excited. It's starting to look more and more to me like this market is stuck in a sideways range. And we've got all these yellow bars. Today's session did have a bit of a move higher, so perhaps I'm more bullish than bearish at the moment, but really the buyers have dropped the ball a couple of times here trying to rally the market up. I think I would consider this to be the immediate range right here. And honestly, until it gets outside of here, I'm not sure we're going to have anything tradable. If it breaks to the upside, we should get a buy signal on this retest here. If it breaks lower, we should get a sell signal off of this retest here. So I think that might be the best course of action right now, is just wait for the market to sort itself out. I think they're just kind of, how did Jim put it the other day, swap and spit? Which is a trading analogy I haven't heard before, but it seems very appropriate. They're just kind of trading punches here. They buy a few, they sell a few. All right, you guys, on that note, let's button up the room. I'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same station, and hopefully the markets will be